Okay guys, so today we have a 2008 Lexus RX 350 and we're going to do brakes and rotors and a brake fluid change. On the brakes here, fairly simple. On the caliper there is the two bolts here and on the opposite side over there, and then you have the two caliper bracket bolts, which are these two here, and those attach down inside here, right there, and down below there. And then once you get those off, hang up your caliper so that it's not hanging from the brake cable, and then the rotor is basically ready to come off. It's possible that it could be seized on there. This one's not. It was about falling off. That's why I put the lug nut on there to hold it in place while I took the caliper bracket off. But if you do have that issue where it's seized on there, you do have these bolt holes right here and here. Put a couple bolts in there. It's probably those same ones I had from my Tacoma, which was like, I think it was an MA by 1. You know what, I'm not real sure, honestly. I'd have to check. But yeah, a couple bolts in there if you can find the right size bolts that fit there. Crank them down a little bit on each side at a time and slowly so that it kind of pulls it out evenly, and should go pretty smoothly. Okay, so I think I got the caliper compressed enough. I may need to come back in and compress it a little more, but the way the tool is, that's pretty close as far as it'll expand. So if I need to go any further, I'm gonna have to take one of these old pads and put it in between to give some extra space there, which is no big deal. It's easy to do. Just put a pad or two in there and the tool between them and press them apart. And this is my tool here, the spreader. It's ratcheting, and you just flip the little lever and it changes from tightening to loosening. And you've also got plates to do a dual piston caliper as well. Now, when you take your rotor off, if the hub looks like this, make sure you clean that up real good and put some anti-seize on there. Okay guys, so I'm greasing up the slide pins here and the abutment clips, or these clips on the end here. On these ones, they have two tracks, the top one there and the bottom one there. I can't get in there too well to get that rust out, just because it's kind of blocked by the tab they're sticking down. So I'm just going to grease real well in there. And on the slide pins, this one here is just a straight metal one. Make sure you lube them up real decent, like a decent coating, and avoid the tip, because you don't want to have like hydraulic lock, which is where the grease ends up in the tip and it won't compress. So on this one here, this one has the rubber tip. So on this one I lubricated a real good coating around, but wipe it off the tip, because those grooves in that rubber piece will actually allow air to come out, allowing it to not bind up in there from the grease at the tip. So avoid the tip and a real nice coating on it. And then on the clips, I'm going to use moly grease, and on those a real nice coating too. Okay guys, so on the clips here, or the shims basically here that your pad's right on, I did grease them up really well, but you don't want to have gobs of it on there. You don't want it globbed, because you don't want anything getting on the rotor or anywhere on the pads, just on the ears themselves. So just a decent light coating. And then on the bracket bolts on the back here, I don't have the manual, but from what I can find online, it looks like the bracket bolts are about 79 foot-pounds and the caliper bolts are 25. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that on and then jump over to the other side and do that, and I'll probably just come back after I get to the back. One more thing I didn't mention, the back of the pads you want to grease up with some silicone grease. Generally, the outside pad you could use moly grease on, but the inside pad, because it's right up against the caliper and the boot there, you're going to want to use silicone grease, because the moly grease or anything that's petroleum based is going to degrade that rubber and tear it down, make it swell and stuff. So Yeah, silicone grease there. If you want to, you can lube up the ears there. I don't think I'm going to because I put a decent coat inside the shims, rather than the clips. But the pads here also don't have the anti-squeal tabs. The old ones didn't either. I don't know if that's a normal thing for Lexus, but if you don't have those, then you definitely need to keep an eye on your pads so that you don't end up wearing them all the way down, because instead of getting a squealing from the squeal tab, you're going to get a grinding from the rotor and the rivets of the pad grinding metal on metal, and at that point there's no possibility of saving the rotors. You're just going to have to replace them, guaranteed. I recommend replacing the rotors every time anyways, but if you want to keep them, don't let your pads go down that far. Okay, so I just finished taking it apart and putting it back together because we do have the hardware kit. It was down in the bottom of the box, so make sure you check the bottom of the box if you don't have the hardware kit. Also, the anti-squeal tabs are in there, and I see why they weren't on the original pads, because they only fit on the back pad. If you put them on the front pad, the caliper bracket's in the way, so they must have tried it on the front and then just decided it wasn't going to fit and not put it on. So the anti-squeal tab, if you want to put it on, has to go on the back pad. Okay, so on the back here, I went ahead and pulled the caliper. It's just 2 bolts here. On this one, the caliper bolts are the slide pins too, so they just go directly through the caliper and into the bracket where this slider is. So I'm going to pull those pads off, and the rotors here, replace the rotors, or the brackets, and then the rotors. And when you're doing this, make sure that you don't have the e-brake on, otherwise you won't be able to get those rotors off. Sorry, it's a kind of a rotor and a drum in one, because the parking brake works on the inside there. So you want to make sure the parking brake's off, and if it won't slide off, then again you got the 2 holes for the bolts that you can use to pull it back slowly. Okay, so you can see a lot of pine needles and pine stuff here. This is in the mountains, but with the brake fluid, when you're compressing your calipers to fit the pads in, you always have to make sure that when you compress them, you open up the brake fluid reservoir. You can put the cap back over it, but don't lock it so that it can vent. And also, it's going to press the brake fluid back up into here as you press the caliper. So once it fills up, you're going to have to keep an eye on it. Once it fills up, use something like this syringe here to siphon out as much as you can out of the reservoir, and then fill it back up with, well, no, you don't want to fill it up with clean fluid yet, because we're going to still siphon everything out before we do the bleeding. But if we were at the point of doing the bleeding, then we're going to siphon it and then refill it. But for now, just make sure you keep it down to where it doesn't overflow on you. Okay, so taking these guys apart was really difficult. Those rotors there are really seized on the center, but they do take the same 2 bolts as my Tacoma takes, which I think it's like M8 by 1.25 or something like that. I'd have to check, but the 2 bolts that work for the rotors on the Tacoma also work for the Lexus RX 350, whatever it's called, sorry. So I did have to use those to get it off. Obviously I took the 2 bolts out first, but then over on this side here, I went ahead and anti-seized up the hub before I put this back on. But I wanted to point out, when you put this on here, you have to make sure that you line up the right way. If you go 180 degrees opposite, then you will have those 2 screws lined up over the holes, and you won't be able to get your hub off if it seizes. So make sure that those 2 threaded holes have metal behind them when you put them in. Okay, so not only does it allow these holes to line up to where you have a backing to open it, but the hole where the rubber plug goes to be able to adjust the adjuster, which is another way that you would get it off. If you do not have that in the correct place, then the plug will not stay in, and it will not, you will not be able to reach the adjuster through there either. So it's really important to make sure you get this rotor on here in the correct way. Make sure there's metal behind both holes, and then this one not. Okay guys, so I did kind of end up getting sidetracked on the day that I did this. I had to do an extra brake bleed, so I did not end up recording when I put the back here together or the brake bleed. But I'm going to kind of go over what we do in that. So basically for the caliper bracket has two bolts there. Oops, these large bolts, that one there, and then there's one right down, right there. And then once you install those two bolts and tighten those down, then you're gonna move on to the caliper here. And on this you've got the two bolts, which are also your slide pins, so make sure you grease those up when you put them in. And then make sure the boot goes onto, there's like a little groove on the slide pin and also a groove on the caliper, so that boot has to hook onto both of those, and the same on this one here. And then once you get that torque down the two caliper bolts there, and then it's on to bleeding. If you want to put the tires back on, you can. It can be done, bleeding can be done with the tires on or with the tires off, and even on the ground, as long as you're a fairly smaller person like me. But basically you see there's the bleeders in the back. The back ones are like that, and then on the front one, your bleeder screw is actually, let's see if I can get to it, it's up inside here, back in the back. Yeah, I can't focus on it, but it is back up in there. On the front side, I'll kind of point to it here. Oh, you can't even see my hand, can you? But it is back up, right up inside there on the back side, kind of up towards the top of the caliper. There I am, right there. And the way you're gonna bleed it is come up here and siphon out all of the fluid out of the master reservoir. Get as much as you can, because the more you get out of here, the less you're gonna have to bleed through. So once you get all of the fluid out of here that you can, fill it back up with new fluid, and then come back to the back, and you're actually going to start on the passenger side, and you're going to work from the furthest away to the closest. So the furthest away is going to be the passenger back, then the driver's back, then the passenger's front, and then the driver's front. Oops, sorry. And so when you do that, it's a fairly simple procedure. I have a one-man bleeder that I'm going to show you, so let me get that set up real quick, and I'll kind of guide you through what you do. So I'm not sure if I gave the torque specs when I was recording, so I'll give them now. On the front caliper, on the mounting bracket, the torque is going to be 79 foot-pounds, and on the caliper it will be 25 foot-pounds. On your lug nuts it's going to be 83 foot-pounds, and then on all four wheels, and then on the rear, your caliper bracket is going to be 58, and your caliper is going to be 32. So once you get all that done, to do the brake, fill up the master cylinder or the master cylinder reservoir like I said, and then make sure that cap's open, and well, no, sorry, close the cap. Put the hose of the one-man brake bleeder. This is the one-man brake bleeder. Let's see if I got another one here I can show you. But basically, you hook that up, and I don't have another one. Here we go. So this one here, this is what it is. It's a little check valve, basically, that little metal tube. It has a ball and a spring in there, and there's an arrow on there that points in the direction. The ones that I got were made incorrectly. They put the arrow and the ball and spring backwards. So if it does not work when you get one, take it apart and reverse it and see if it does. But it's got 2 hoses. It even comes with some little hose clamps, which you don't need. It's got the 2 hoses, and it comes with a bunch of bleeder screw caps. But basically, just take the large hose, hook it onto the bleeder screw like that, and then run it down and into a bottle. On this, because you have that check valve, it doesn't matter whether there's fluid in the bottle, because it's not going to be sucking anything back up. The spring keeps that check valve closed so that fluid will only go out and not back in. So then once you've got it set up like this, all you got to do is crack that bleeder screw open back here, which is an 8mm, and you turn that counterclockwise just a little bit, just enough to break it free to where it's not less than hand tight. You'll be able to tell when you press the brake pedal, and then you're going to go inside and you're going to pump on the brake pedal. On the back right over there, generally for me, I think in this case, and what I generally do is about 20 pumps over there, just to make sure I get it really well bled. That's usually enough. If you have somebody else to watch, just watch to make sure the bubbles are all the way through, or all the bubbles are out. And on these, sometimes you'll get bubbles down in the bottom tube, so make sure you're looking at the top tube and make sure that this isn't leaking air in on the side of the bleeder there. That is possible. So if you are leaking air there, then put one of those clamps on there. But on this side, I think I did about 15, and on the front passenger side, I did about 10 there, and then over on the driver's side, I did about 7 there. And I don't think I really needed to do quite that much, but it's a good pattern, I think. Make sure you get it all. If you're not sure, go more. Brake fluid is pretty cheap, and you definitely don't want to leave any air in there. Most important thing when you're doing this, don't let the master cylinder reservoir go dry, because otherwise you're going to get air all up in the system and have to bleed the master cylinder and everything all again. And the master cylinder, when you bleed that, it's a big mess. A lot of people just take it out of the car and bench bleed it, but you can do it in the car. It's a big mess. You get fluid everywhere, so you end up having to wipe up a lot and then wash it off afterwards. But make sure you do wash it off if you do that, because it will eat the paint. But I do have a video on my channel of doing it on my Scion TC, bleeding the master cylinder, or explaining how to bleed it in the car. So if you're interested, check that out. But I think that's pretty much it. Once you get everything bled, just close everything back up. When you're done at each wheel, be sure you close up that bleeder screw before you take the hose off. Otherwise, you're going to get air back up in there. So once you're done pumping, close the bleeder screw back, and then you can disconnect and move to the next one. Put your tires back on if you took them off. Make sure your reservoir is full, and go take a test drive. And start out slow and just check and make sure your brakes are going to work well. And before you even shift into gear, pump it and make sure it'll build up pressure. If it still feels spongy, it doesn't hold pressure, then you're going to have to go back and do some more. So hopefully this helps.